This is a Dog Nation special. Unmatched coverage of UGA in the postseason is brought to you by Kroger, Royal Caribbean, Jittery Joe's Coffee, and the UGA Bookstore.
Hello, Dog Nation, and welcome into our Dog Nation postseason special. I'm Kaylee Mansell with Connor Riley, Cody Chaffins. We're here in New Orleans at the Sugar Bowl, where we're now we got a day until Georgia takes on Notre Dame, and yesterday we actually got a chance to talk to the team, see Kirby Smart speak for an hour. And Cody, just my instant observation was the teammate chemistry seems to be different now.
Yeah, they've seemed really loose. Everybody keeps texting me, how's the team looking? What are they looking like? They seemed really loose and kind of enjoying the moment, which some teams, if you get a little nervous, you can kind of get stiff and not know what to do. But this is a team, we saw players all running over to give each other hard times, and they just felt comfortable in this kind of big moment, which they've got a lot of big game experience. It's a lot of fun for us because it kind of felt like a buffet. It was like too many choices.
Yeah.
Like, we could talk to him. And so we got to talk to everybody. Everybody we talked to. Now, some of the freshmen, they're talking to us for the first time. They looked a little nervous, but that's just because they're doing interviews for the first time. I think the team as a whole, though, that was a great bonding experience. Having all those guys kind of run over and see Tate Ratledge was kind of a cool moment. And so I think, this team feels loose right now going in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, Connor, I think that this team is under one united front right now. I think that has a lot to do with Gunnar Stockton and their support of him. And yesterday was one of the first times we've really gotten to speak to him, even if it was only 4-word answers at a time. Like, I do think that he's embracing this role in the spotlight, and he looks like the team leader as of right now.
Yeah, if you're thinking Gunnar Stockton was going to come in here and give eloquent monologues and deep, thoughtful, like, that's just not who he is. And I think events like yesterday help us shine a better light on who Gunnar Stockton is. Got a chance to hear from Oscar Delp, Drew Bobo, a couple of guys that he's lived with, Ryan Puglisi, a guy he's shared the quarterback room with here at the University of Georgia, and they help paint a better picture in terms of who Gunnar is, because I know everyone wants to make a big deal about who Gunnar is and the truck and the cows and all the fun things that come with that, but my big takeaway from yesterday is when this guy steps on the field for Georgia, he's an absolute dog, D-A-W-G, and I think that resonates with this team. It provides some juice to this team, and it's something that I think is going to help them sort of weather these next 3 games as they make a push to go out and try and win a national championship.
And if it's anything like yesterday, he's going to do it all with a smile on his face, like literally the entire time.
I had some friends that were coming down for the Sugar Bowl. I said, you've got to dress up in a cow costume, right? Show up in it. That's how you get on TV tomorrow. Show up in a cow costume, because I think that is the overarching story, everybody's favorite story of the week. And there's always something like that, but that one's so fun. And I think the players, the fact that he's not a pretty boy quarterback, which sometimes you can get, I think that helps everybody kind of rally around him.
And yesterday you were really in the mix of things because you and Brandon were doing Dog Nation Daily and like just going up to players. Was there any conversations that surprised you, or like a point that you heard that you were like, yeah, like maybe I didn't think about that, but that's really good?
One guy that I loved talking to was Christian Miller. He's a guy that we don't get to hear from a lot, and probably because he's too much fun.
Yeah.
And same, I think Warren Brinson kind of had that way about him, and Kirby, because media days past, he's been really fun. And so Christian Miller was really cool listening to him. I loved our conversation with Trey Scott, who's the defensive line coach, talking about keeping these guys off of Jalen Walker so that he can and how selfless you have to be. Connor and I, as former offensive linemen, we can appreciate that, right? Like, those are kind of the unsung heroes, but the way he talked about how they approached that was a really cool conversation.
Connor, what about for you? I saw you running out here yesterday. Anything that stuck out?
It's similar to Cody. I think getting a chance to sit and talk with these assistant coaches, and not just, the Mike Bobo and Glenn Schumann, who we get once in August and we get once in December. But, I got a chance to talk to Todd Hartley for about 7 minutes yesterday. I covered a bunch of different topics. His tight end room this year, the fake punt that he had a hand in the SEC championship game, his reaction to Brock Bowers. I thought he had a great reaction to that. And hearing from him, hearing from Travaris Robinson, hearing from the different coaches, again, it helps, I think, fill in some of the blanks, some of the question marks that we had about this team and have a better idea of, not just who they are when they're on the field, but obviously who they are off the field and what makes the makeup of this team so special, because we've heard Kirby Smart say it time and time again, it may not be the best team that he's had here at the University of Georgia, but there's a mental component to this team that has allowed them to get to this point in the season. And I think if they're going to go on to win a national championship, that mental toughness that we hear so much about is going to be a big reason why.
Yeah, Dog Nation, if you want to hear about these conversations more in depth, then you can check out our YouTube page. We still have interviews going up from not just coaches, but players as well. So make sure to check that out on our Dog Nation YouTube page. One thing that we got to see that was probably just as exciting as what we saw yesterday morning is we got to watch the dogs do yoga again.
What a day it was. Kirby, I think from what I understand, maybe was surprised that the media had access to practice last week, and so we actually got to see them do practice. I think if he would have planned it differently, they would have figured out a way to not do that. But he definitely knew we were coming yesterday, and the thing about the yoga is, it's something. It's actually still very interesting that they do it, right? Like to see these Tate Ratledge over here in a pose, like that is a crazy thing to see, and really see how flexible some of those guys are. But Kirby wasn't going to give anything away, and not only that, like they're all laying down. We couldn't even barely tell who was who. Like it took me all of the 15 minutes to figure out which one was Gunnar Stockton, so I could get one shot of Gunnar Stockton. But going in that building, still they kind of get acclimated to that, and they're ready for a big game type atmosphere.
Yeah, I think you were the one that called that too, because we did get to see like a sliver of real practice. Like you knew that this was coming.
Yeah, when they put out the schedule and said that Georgia practice was going to be at some point from 2 to 5 p.m. and then they tell you it's 4:30. You get, and you've done enough of these. They did this at the national championship game in 2022 in Los Angeles. You're around this team long enough, this program long enough. Kirby Smart's not going to want you to see anything at practice, and so we veterans here had a pretty good idea that you guys were going to get a chance to see some yoga yesterday, and you certainly did. And I'm sure it was super exciting and a great usage of your time here down in New Orleans.
It's got a great history, though, right? Like last time they did it, I'm thinking a 2022 run. They did it at the Peach Bowl. They did it at before the national championship.
Yeah, I guess it's true that Georgia's never lost when the media's gotten to see them do yoga at practice, right? Is that the stat?
It wasn't on the game notes, so but that sounds about right.
All right. Well, one of the cool things about being here in New Orleans is that we actually get to go out and do some fun stuff and do some team bonding. Last night we did get to go down to Bourbon Street, and one of the things that I noticed, like from the rooftop, is all this apparel that Georgia fans have. It makes you think like, oh my gosh, like I need to step up my game wear, because you see all these people in their nice shirts. And Dog Nation, the best way that you can do that is by going to the Georgia Bookstore. They have the largest available merchandise anywhere. It includes brands like Vineyard Vines, Peter Millar, Columbia, Southern Tide, and they can make any jersey that you want in store, online, 247. So make sure to check them out on social media or visit them at thegeorgiabookstore.com. That's UGAbookstore.com. Oh, okay. I'm excited we get to talk about this, because when the time that we're filming this, there are bowl games going on, but tonight is going to be the first quarterfinal game. It's going to be Penn State versus Boise State. I think, Connor, the question is really simple here. Is there any world where Boise State pulls off the upset?
Oh, absolutely.
You think so?
They've got history in this building. This is where they famously beat Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl back in, I believe, 2007.
Statue of Liberty. Yeah.
Statue of Liberty, Jared Zabransky to Ian Johnson. And look, they've got the best player in this game in Ashton Genty. And look, Penn State's got a very talented defense. They're going to do everything they can, I think, to bottle them up. But this Boise State team is not just Ashton Genty. They have 52 sacks on the season. That ranks in the top 5 in the country. Maddox Madison has improved, I think, as the season has progressed. And look, this Boise State team went toe-to-toe with Oregon and Eugene. They're not going to be afraid by Penn State. This is not the best team they've played so far this season. I think Penn State still finds a way to win this game just by the overall talent. But I'm not going to be surprised if we wake up tomorrow morning and are waiting to see if Georgia or Notre Dame is playing Boise State in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, I think Connor brings up a good point. And when you have opponents like this, like it really does come down to talent. And Penn State's going to have better recruits. They're going to have better players out of the transfer portal. And I know we always make fun of James Franklin for not winning the games where he's not supposed to. But on paper, Penn State should win this game, which makes me feel like this is a James Franklin setup game where he's going to get it done, maybe barely, but he's supposed to win this game, and I think he will.
I think you talk about Ashton Genty, that's a team you can control the game if you can run the football. Mm-hmm. We see that so many times, and so if they can slow that, get that game go by quickly, and they have the ball for a long time, there's not a lot of opportunities for Penn State. That's how you do it. Penn State had 2 pick sixes in the game against SMU. I don't think you're going to get 2 pick sixes in this game, so I think it should be a fun one. I'm ready to see an upset in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the Peach Bowl, because Texas comes back to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and I feel like Arizona State is one of those opponents that maybe a lot of people don't know that much about, just because they weren't relevant or in the mix of things until the very end of the season. But you are our biggest Arizona State advocate. What are your thoughts on the game?
Look, this is an Arizona State team, unquestionably a great season. I think they deserve to be here. Cam Scatabo if Ashton Gentry is the best running back in college football, Scadaboo is not too far behind in what he has meant to that Arizona State program. Sam Levitt is a really talented quarterback, but I think in this game, I think the Texas defense is going to come out and make a statement and really choke the life out of Arizona State, and I think that's going to make it hard for the Sun Devils to try and compete in this game. We'll see. I'm interested in seeing what we see from this Texas offense. They ran the ball so well against Clemson, but they couldn't do anything against the Georgia defensive front. I think this Arizona State front is closer to what Clemson has than Georgia has, obviously. And if Texas is able to run the ball, I think that's just going to make it very easy for them to win this game.
Choke the life out of them? That's a very subtle way of putting it.
Arizona State was talking smack all week, too. And so I loved seeing that. Kind of bring the swag. Why not? But if you're anything like Kirby Smart, I was playing over and over in that Texas locker room. We'll see what they can do. To me, the fact that, you love, games like this, but the fact that that higher seed is the underdog in the games we're talking about just says find that flaw in the college football playoff system. So it'll be interesting to me. Boise State and Arizona State, they're fighting for their, get a bye next year lives, because I can definitely see if those teams get beat pretty badly, then next year you cannot give those teams, even if they win their conference, they can get in, but they can't get a bye in one of these top 4 seeds.
Yeah, as you mentioned, they are technically the lower seed, but they're favored. And I was very fascinated to find out earlier this week that Texas is now favored to win the national championship, which is bizarre to me because they're going to have to go through either Oregon or Ohio State, and I just it does make sense of it for me.
So Ohio State is going to have to play Oregon, and then they're probably going to have to play Texas. Oregon is going to have to play Ohio State and then probably Texas, and then they're going to have to win the national championship game against one of the other teams from the other side of the bracket. And I think just simply because of the fact that Texas is such a wide favorite over Arizona State tilts the odds ever so slightly, whereas Ohio State or Oregon are going to have to beat multiple of those elite teams.
So, they got to win 2 of those tough games
Correct.
to get to the national championship. Instead, Texas only have to win 1. So the path is easier.
Yes.
So now let's move on to Ohio State and Oregon, the rematch that everyone has been waiting on. And we've seen 2 different variations of Ohio State this year. I mean, they played probably what has been their best ball versus Tennessee, and then maybe the worst of them we saw against Michigan. If the Ohio State team comes out that we saw against Tennessee, it's a no-brainer for me that they can take on Oregon, but it just comes down to the fact that it's Jekyll and Hyde. I don't know what version of Ohio State we're going to get.
I think you'll get a big game Ohio State. I think the Michigan game was just a weird game for a lot of reasons. I think that team's going to have it together and be ready to play this. It's a rematch. The thing we talked about so much between Georgia and Texas, can you beat a team twice? And it was a 1-point game in Oregon last time, so that definitely I feel like Ohio State can get this done.
Yeah, it's just for me, it's not even about Michigan, but seeing what happened when they played Nebraska as well. It showed some flaws in the system, but again, when they're playing their best ball, I don't know if there's anybody that can beat them.
Right, and Oregon, juxtaposed to that, they've been very consistent. They've been very level-headed all season, and I think that is ultimately going to make the difference here, because I don't think Ohio State is going to play as well as they did against Tennessee. It's just hard to replicate that kind of performance in back-to-back weeks. Whereas this Oregon team, I think we know what they are. And while, yes, this Ohio State team is more talented, I think this Oregon team has a mental toughness to them that maybe this Ohio State team is just lacking a little bit. And I think that's going to make the difference for the Ducks tomorrow.
I'm very interested to see Oregon play this game because you said that you know exactly who Oregon is, but I'm not quite sure that I do yet. I feel like they might be one of the weaker number 1 seeds that we've had, and in the midst of how crazy this college football season has been, I just don't see an Oregon team that pulls out a perfect record and has no obstacles to overcome. So I think I'll have a better grasp on how good Oregon actually is tomorrow when they have this rematch.
Yeah, it'll be, like you said, they haven't lost, so it's hard to find, and it's hard to think about all these teams would all, you'd have a team that would go undefeated, but they got the best quarterback, right? So
best quarterback, and they've already beaten 3 other quarterfinalists in the college football playoff this year, in Boise State, Penn State, and Ohio State.
I mean, it'll be fun. That's going to be probably, Georgia game will be a lot of fun to watch too, but I think that one it's going to be a barn burner again.
All right. Well, hopefully tomorrow night when Georgia takes on Notre Dame, we've talked about it on our show, Dog Nation at Large. I kind of wanted this to happen because y'all know I have a different level of hatred for Notre Dame. Sorry to all the Notre Dame
people
out there.
Where does it come from?
I think
Catholicism.
It has nothing to do. I see them in the same way that like I view the Dallas Cowboys as like this institution that puts themselves
Duke
above everyone else.
okay.
Yeah, something like that. And like, I guess just the not being in a conference, and I totally understand why they don't do that. But I'm also of the belief that like you should not be able to compete in the college football playoff if you are not in a conference already. There's my hot take. And then it's just that we're above you. And yesterday I heard Riley Leonard say something. He said that, well, we have the smartest players of any team in the country, so we have to use that to our advantage. I'm like, okay, you've been here for a year. Calm down. But it's just like little comments like that, I think. But we're going to see if Georgia can get the job done. Obviously, the biggest question mark is Gunnar Stockton. How much do you think they change the scheme? Do they at all, or do they go with the game plan they had for Carson?
I think they tweak it a little bit and augment it to better fit Gunnar Stockton's skill set, but you're not going to learn a whole new language in 3 weeks, and so this offense is still going to have to function like it does. I don't expect Georgia to come out and throw the ball 40 times like we've seen them do with Carson Beck this season. It's imperative that this team is able to run the ball, and I think this Georgia offensive line has a chance to make a statement. Notre Dame, they lose their best defensive lineman, Riley Mills, in that game against Indiana. They've got the size advantage up front. I want to see this Georgia front, which has been up and down this season. Injuries, I think, are a big reason why. If they're able to come out and control the game with the offensive line, I think that's going to make Gunnar Stockton's life all the more easier.
I think you don't want to be behind, right?
No.
You don't want to have Gunnar Stockton having to play from behind in passing situations where they know they're going to pass. And even that, I'm interested to see, they come out on first down. Is it a run every first down just to try and, shorten the sticks so you're not getting a third and long? So I'm interested to see. And Greg McElroy, Brandon talked to him yesterday, great interview, and again on the Dog Nation YouTube channel, but he talked kind of specifically. He said they're not going to change the offense. They may call different plays more, or they might change their blitz beater to something he does a little bit better, but it's going to be the same playbook. They may just select different plays.
Something I've seen on social media floating around, I think I heard a little bit last night, is people are saying that there might be some advantage that there's not that much film on Gunnar, so Notre Dame doesn't necessarily know what to expect. Now, there's probably enough based on what they saw in the SEC championship, but, do you believe that to be true, or is that something that people tell themselves to make them feel better about what's about to happen?
I think they have an idea of what Gunnar is going to be able to do and how to defend him, and I think you even saw in the second half of that Texas game as the game progressed. I think Texas had a better idea of how to try and attack Gunnar Stockton and make him feel uncomfortable back there. If I'm Mike Bobo, and this is a huge Mike Bobo game with Gunnar Stockton stepping in, you as the offensive coordinator need to make things easier for your quarterback. And so this is a very, I think, large game for Bobo to go out and make a statement. And if I'm, Georgia partisan, I know it hasn't always been great, but in big games this season, start games, it's been a deep shot to Arian Smith. It feels like they haven't yet hit it. I want to see Georgia tomorrow come out and Gunnar Stockton chuck it deep to Arian Smith on the first play. Sort of Notre Dame's not going to see it coming. They're going to play man-to-man coverage. They're going to try and stick with him. Arian Smith is a great athlete. Hasn't always been able to make the catch, but I want to see Georgia come out and make a statement on the first play and say, hey, even though we got a new quarterback, we're still the same old mean, nasty Georgia Bulldogs.
We saw Gunnar do it in high school. Braxton Hicks on the other end.
Oh, yeah.
Well, former Georgia walk-on was always there at Raven County, and he can throw a deep ball now.
So one thing that we'll touch on like really in depth tomorrow on our Dog Nation pregame show, it's going to start at 6:45. We'll go more in depth on it, but I do want to touch on it a little bit, is in looking at this Notre Dame defense, they're a lot better than I thought that they were, but it looks like their weakest part of their defense is their run defense, and with a new quarterback, I imagine we're going to see a lot more run play. You saw Trevor Etienne yesterday, Nate Frazier. I think that they're going to be a really crucial part in Georgia getting the edge over Notre Dame.
And I think the offensive line, like I said, is going to be an offensive line game, and that's the key for me too, is that Georgia had these 3 weeks to get better. Into the Georgia Tech game, like Jared Wilson, he looked like he was limping back to the huddle. So he was never listed as an injury guy, but those guys needed a break, and so they got that break. And I think Mike Bobo talked this week about how he challenged that team at halftime of the Texas game, and this is a challenge for them again. If they'll come out fired up, I think, like you said, that's the advantage for Georgia, and I think they can come out and they can dominate. And again, like we talked about with Boise State, you run the ball, you control the game.
But again, it's not just the offensive line. Georgia had a much needed break. This is the healthiest version that we're going to see of Georgia at this point in the season, and so that makes me feel a lot better about the game, especially with a new quarterback, is knowing that you have a lot of these players who needed that rest.
To that point, Notre Dame has played one playoff team so far this season. That's Indiana, who, while I believe they deserve to be in the playoff, we're not a playoff talented level team.
Weakest playoff team?
Them or SMU, yes.
SMU looked
SMU
rough.
looked very unprepared for their game. I think that with this Georgia team, Notre Dame is certainly capable of beating them tomorrow, but this is going to be about the third or fourth best team that they've played so far this season. And so because of that, I don't think that Georgia's going to be afraid in this game. And as Cody pointed out, this game's going to be won on the lines of scrimmage. I think that's what Notre Dame wants to do well. It's what Georgia does well. Georgia's offensive line and defensive line outplayed Notre Dame's offensive line and defensive line. I think we're sitting here on January 2nd talking about a Georgia football win.
Well, guys, there's only one thing left to do. It's been some time since we've done it. We usually do it on our show, Dog Nation at Large, but since that's going to be on Thursday, we're going to go ahead and put in our touchdown predictions now. So we'll start. I'll go last.
Okay.
I'll let you go first.
Oh, then I'm going to go Trevor Etienne. I need the easy money here.
Take it?
Yeah.
I'm going to take Gunnar Stockton's roommate, Oscar Delp.
He
that's a
swerved.
good one.
He thought it was.
I was like, dang it, because I'm going to take Gunnar Stockton, QB sneak. First one. He hasn't scored a touchdown this season.
See one of those Stetson kind of rollouts.
Yeah, so I feel good about that pick. So you have Oscar. You took Trevor Etienne. We'll just go ahead and give you the point. That's automatic banger.
Etienne in Louisiana. Yeah, they're going to get him a touchdown.
And then don't forget, tomorrow we'll have the Dog Nation pregame show. It's going to start at 6:45 Eastern. It's taking me some time to understand the time. The time change is hard. 6:45. Make sure to tune in. And then of course after the show, it's going to be Brandon Adams post game. As soon as the show is over, I hope it's a great conversation that he's having and not that classic semi upset Brandon.
3 in the morning on this post game show.
Yeah.
Especially if they win.
Well, Dog Nation, thank you so much for joining us on our post-season special. Y'all check out the Georgia Bookstore. Check out pregame tomorrow, and then don't forget about post-game right after the game. And we will see you guys tomorrow.